To the Point with Michael Williams.
Good morning. Today, in our ongoing series of interviews focused on local congressional candidates, we turn to District 21, covering parts of the Treasure Coast and Palm Beach County. Incumbent Brian Mast, the Republican, of course, will be my guest next week. Today, Democrat and political newcomer Thomas Witkop. We appreciate you being with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
25 years old. You already have one record, youngest candidate, I understand, in the entire country for Congress, correct?
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit about where you hail from, when you moved down here, what you do for a living.
Well, I'm originally from Maryland, and I came down to Florida because my wife was working here as a public school teacher.
Okay.
And like many other Floridians, I am struggling with the impossible cost of living. And I was looking around thinking to myself, why are the representatives not doing anything about this? So, I got to work and I discovered quickly that the #1 driver that makes it difficult to live in Florida is home insurance. It's over 427% of the national average, and that cost is often passed down to renters like myself.
As we talk about that, but just a little bit more on your bio, how long have you lived here?
I've lived here for over 2 years now.
And you jumped into the race because these issues were important to you. What do you do when you're not running for Congress? What do you do for work?
I was working as a community organizer in a nonprofit in Jupiter.
I take it that your #1 issue is the one you just described. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your chief issue, the insurance crisis, and how many would argue, can Congress really have any significant role in doing anything about it? Is it your #1 issue? If so, how do you tackle it directly when many argue private marketplace, not a lot you can do?
Home insurance is, in fact, my #1 issue, and we're finding that the state legislature, which is super dominated by Republicans, is doing nothing about it.
So specifically, what do you do about it?
Absolutely. From a national level, and we've had bills like the Homeowners Defense Act introduced by Frederica Wilson and reintroduced by Jared Moskowitz. It pools the risk of natural disasters, which are more frequent and stronger thanks to the climate change, with the entire country rather than just at a statewide level.
Your literature on the insurance crisis, when you talk about issues, says Congress has a unique ability to nationalize the cost of these disasters so that we recover more quickly. Do you see a permanent nationalization in some aspects of the insurance industry?
I think in Florida, that's what it's going to require.
A permanent nationalization?
Yes. As we're seeing, storms are only becoming more frequent and stronger, and we're seeing that in California has wildfires, Arizona has droughts. We need to make sure that we pool the risk with everybody, because when a huge hurricane comes through right now, 11 insurance companies go belly up in the state of Florida.
No less than the liberal institution UC Berkeley did a paper on this a few years ago. They said there may end up being a need, and it is being discussed, about some nationalization. They said in that paper should be temporary. There are things the private marketplace can do better. There will be people who would cheer such an idea. There'll be people who look askance at it and say government tends to not make things more dynamic, more streamlined, more favorable to the marketplace. Is it a bit too far to say nationalize it permanently? And at what cost?
Well, we live in a state that's hammered by hurricanes on an annual basis. So we're never going to be able to bring down home insurance to the national average. But right now it's 427% of the national average. So we need to do something. And we need to at least introduce the bill and see how it goes. And we need Congress people like Mast, who votes against this, with Jared Moskowitz and Frederica Wilson putting it on the floor, to come up with solutions that make it possible to live here in Florida.
What are the other top issues for you on behalf of your potential constituents, sir?
Absolutely. So home insurance, the environment, our waterways are #1 to me. Not only are they near and dear to my heart as I depend on them regularly for recreation, but they are also a critical part of our economy and tourism and our livelihoods. So with the environment, and then the last one is reproductive rights.
Let's talk about environment for a moment.
Let's talk about
environment.
And then
we'll get to those.
Yeah, absolutely. For the environment, right now we're having discharges from Lake Okeechobee into the St. Lucie estuary, which Brian Mast has promised wouldn't be a problem after 8 years in office. He's done nothing to stop those. What we need to do is go at it from an agricultural perspective with the Farm Bill and make sure that special interests are not deciding which way the water is going, that sugar is not being given money by the government to pollute our Florida politics. Brian Mast receives over $1 million from agribusiness.
There's an argument that the problem's so multidimensional that while agriculture has a role, there's also issues north of the lake. There's also issues with urban and suburban runoff. His campaign, hearing some of your criticisms, called him, quote, politically motivated, said, among other things, quoting here, together with the community, he's authorized the EAA Southern Storage Reservoir, implemented the Lake Okeechobee System Operation Manual to cut discharges, and secured hundreds of millions to restore the Everglades. They went on to say, and I quote here, politicians who 2 weeks ago probably couldn't tell you the difference between Jonathan Dickinson State Park and Savannah Preserve State Park should be ashamed, and it goes on. It's A, defense of his record, and B, a not so subtle dig at the fact, here's a newcomer trying to tell somebody with an established record what he should do on water issues. How do you respond to that?
I say, look at his established record.
Well, he just said
he's been here for 8 years, and LOSOM is important. And I'm proud that he's got that, and that's going to be a big help in the problem. But we have to look at what he's not doing, and he's not implementing strict fertilizer limits north of the lake that's leading into the phosphate and nitrogen algae that we're seeing. He's taking tons of money from agriculture, from developers, mind you. I think this is an inherently political problem. We need to make sure that we're empowering people, scientists, folks that care about our community, to direct the water and make decisions, as opposed to special interests who he is really looking out for.
The argument is that it's a problem so huge that it's going to require an all-hands-on-deck issue involving some of those people with ranch lands who've agreed voluntarily to do what you're talking about north of the lake. But politicians, business, agriculture, and the like, do we make it too simple of a problem when we try to pin it on one person, when in reality it's an enormous problem with many moving pieces?
Yeah, we can't pin it on one person. I agree with that. But we have to point out that special interests play way too far a role in allowing sugar and other folks that don't care about our communities and our environment to do what they'd like to do.
Other major topics that you talked about, let's touch on them.
So we're going for home insurance, the environment, and reproductive rights. You know, my fiance and I are a young couple, and we've been, getting pushed out of Florida for many issues, including the cost of living. But what's happening to our democracy here in Florida, the book bannings, the reproductive rights, the underfunding of schools. She's a public school teacher, and seeing what's happening to our schools, this is an erosion of democracy, and that's pushing out young people and other disenfranchised folks from the state.
Let's talk about reproductive rights as part of that. You talked multiple issues there. Reproductive rights, you oppose the ban, the 6-week ban that currently is in effect in Florida. When you talk about, though, democracy, not the will of the people, the fact of the matter is the sitting governor won by 19 points against his Democratic opponent in his last gubernatorial bid after new rules, not the 6-week ban, but a 15-week ban, were in effect. So Republicans argue we are listening to the will of Floridians, and look at the fact that we control every aspect of the legislature, and what we're doing is resonating with people. So how do you argue against that?
First off, this is the same Republican governor that tried to put 3 golf courses on Shady State Park, which was certainly not the will of the people. And I'm going to reinforce that with... You
and your opponent opposed that.
Yes, Mast opposed that, but you have to remember, you cannot listen to what Mast says. You have to look at how he votes, 97% of the time against our environment, according to League of Conservation Voters, and he takes millions of dollars from developers, including those who wanted to put golf courses on our state parks.
And he will have a chance to speak to those criticisms when we have him on next week. Reproductive rights, the environment, insurance. Let's talk about some of the other issues, if I may, if you were to become U.S. Congressman. Democratic U.S. Congressman. Ukraine, you say there are differences there on aid and where you would have gone with the aid vote there. Talk about that.
I would certainly support our aid to Ukraine. Not only do I stand for democracy here in the United States of America, and I would certify the vote of a free and fair election, but I want to support democracies as broad as well, including Ukraine, who's right now facing a dictatorial aggressor.
And you have argued that your opponent is not as vociferous in aid support. And again, we'll talk about that with him. Is Israel-Hamas war? Conservatives argue that liberals, that Democrats, many they argue have not been strong enough in their support of Israel. Your take on that?
Absolutely. And I first off want to reiterate that I believe Israel has the right to exist, and I believe that we should condemn any anti-Semitism and any acts of terrorism, period. And I want to help my generation redefine the perception of the conflict going on in Gaza and Israel right now. Because there are troubling polls where, especially among 18 to 25-year-olds, that believe that Israel doesn't even have a right to exist, which is something that we cannot accept. And I want to show people that we need to have more nuance to this. I mean, we cannot, right now, Netanyahu has no interest in peace, but at the same time, we cannot abandon a very important democracy and ally that we have in Israel.
Question I'm putting to all candidates that none of you talk about. The national debt's $35 trillion and climbing. Democrats routinely say, as do Republicans, will support Social Security and Medicare, no cuts. Every expert says without entitlement reform, we're not going to rein in our runaway national debt. Do you support looking at entitlement reform, whether that means an age cap or the like, or cutting of benefits? Because Republicans and Democrats alike, when they say no to that, they're basically saying, the experts tell us, they're not really about reining in our national debt. Where do you stand?
We should not touch Social Security or Medicare, no question about it. But let me follow up.
Then how do you deal with the national debt?
So as a Democrat, we don't touch Social Security, Medicare, but we need to follow up by increasing the taxes on the corporate tax rate. Donald Trump, supported by Brian Mast, brought the corporate tax rate down from 35% to 21%, ballooning the national debt. That's something that my generation, my kids will have to live with. We should bring that up to 28% at least.
Let me ask you in our remaining time, some will say a youngest person to run for office in the country said, only been here a few years, you're youthful, and they'll say, just not convince me why you're ready yet, why you don't need a little more time, a little more seasoning. I'm sure you get that question. What do you say to people, and what's your closing argument for our audience in this brief appearance about why you're the person?
Well, first I remind people that Patrick Murphy, my main political mentor, first got in office when he was 29 years old, the youngest.
Did his first interview with us, as a matter of fact. But go ahead, to you.
And again, huge fan of him, and he's endorsed my candidacy. But look at the folks in Congress right now. The average age is in their 60s. And that's important that we have the perspective of older folks, wise people, business leaders, but we also need young people who are on the ground, who are facing the problems that average Floridians, average people are facing with the impossible cost of living and everything else that we're dealing with today.
And that's your argument that you continue to make on insurance, what you can do on other issues. We know it's a brief introduction, but we appreciate it nonetheless as we bring candidates in. Again, next week, Brian Mast, but today, Thomas Witkop, Democratic candidate for Congressional District 21.
I appreciate being on, and I just want to offer an opportunity for Congressman Mast to answer to his legislative decisions.
We'll put that question to him about a debate, I think I hear you saying. Up next, Brian Crowley. All the latest that's political, especially in Tallahassee and the condominium debate. Next.